Welcome to the Big Four Accounting Firms podcast, brought to you by big4accountingfirms.com and the Big Four Accounting Firms YouTube channel. Before we get started, just wanted to remind everybody to support us if you have a chance or if you can. Even $1 helps, and we have a link in the description to a website called Buy Me a Coffee. It's just a way to donate to us and support us. Again, any amount is helpful so that we can keep putting out content. And there's also other ways for you to support us in the show notes to this podcast or on YouTube in the description. In today's podcast, I wanted to cover a lot of career resources that people can utilize and just information of stuff going on with the Big Four related to career resources. But first, before we get to that, I want to cover the Twitter poll that we did. Didn't do a good job of advertising it over the past week, but it did finish up, and there's a bunch of ties. So the question I asked was, which accounting firm do you want to work for the most? And we had a tie between PwC and E&Y for the top spot. And then Deloitte and KPMG came in, I guess, last or second. And this makes sense to me because KPMG is the smallest accounting firm, so they should be coming in last. And I thought Deloitte would come higher, but I mean, it makes sense because Deloitte is more of a consulting firm. They're less of an accounting firm. So I think it makes sense that people want to work for PwC or E&Y. We'll continue to run more of these polls/surveys because I think they're useful for people to get a feeling of what's out there. I'd also like to understand what people are looking for. So I think I'll continue to do those. So keep an eye out for that. So next up, I was going on the social media on Twitter, looking up the various Big Four, and I found a bunch of stuff for KPMG. And I know I've been saying a lot of adverse things related to KPMG lately, but one thing I will say is that their resources on social media are pretty good. And one of the things I came across was that they're offering a master's in data and analytics, and this is in the United States. And it's a little bit confusing to find a lot of information on there, but it looks like they're offering a master's in data and analytics specifically for tax. And once you come out, you'll be an experienced associate. I'm not really clear whether you'll be working or not, but it says the responsibilities: you'll be performing tax-related tasks. They may include tax compliance, bankruptcy, and restructuring advisory services or tax due diligence to identify tax exposures and opportunities. The variety of clients that may include partnerships, hedge funds, private equity funds, multinational entities, corporations, and S corporations. And secondly, you'll be analyzing the tax ramifications of various transactions and identify business incentives and tax credits available. You'll examine data and prepare documentation of analyses for financial reporting, blah, blah, blah. You'll support and help implement the use of enabling technologies in tax by working with Excel and a range of innovative technologies, including Alteryx, Power BI, and KPMG proprietary tools. And I've mentioned Alteryx on here a lot. If you haven't got the message by now, you need to get familiar with Alteryx. Now, I don't know how many schools are offering Alteryx as something you can learn, but if they're not, then maybe you want to do these masters in data analytics. And we know that E&Y also has an MBA with Holt that they're offering. So you need to, it's a continuing theme in the Big Four that you need to continue your education once you join there in order to advance, whether it's what they offer or you learn on your own. And PwC has their own internal place where you can learn all this stuff. Another responsibility is you understand the system's implications of enabling technologies, including the extraction of data, the processing of data, and delivery of reports. You assist in developing custom data analysis approaches to address client-specific issues, and you draft tax memos and structure PowerPoint decks and Excel models for various projects. So what I gather out of this is that there's a lot of data that needs to be processed in tax, and it makes sense to me that you would probably focus on partnerships because partnerships have tons and tons of data, and they have to get it out to K1s, and there's just tons of partnerships and multiple levels of information and flow throughs. So there's a lot of things that need to be analyzed there. And a lot of times it's just analyzed for errors. But the rest of these responsibilities sound like the average responsibilities of a tax associate. So it's good to know for those of you out there that are wondering what tax associates do. And drafting tax memos and structuring PowerPoints. I think that might also be for M&A, because I think this tax data and analytics at KPMG, it sounds like you're either going to end up in a partnership practice or an M&A practice. And M&A, it makes sense to me because M&A is a lot of projecting, analyzing, modeling, writing memos. So that makes sense to me too. So that's something to look into for those of you that are overachievers and don't want to just be a regular tax person. You might want to get your master's in data and analytics while you're working at KPMG. And that's in the US. Another thing that the KPMG is doing in the US is they're hosting a bunch of virtual career fairs in various lines of service: audit, tax, consulting, and various industry practices. And if you go to the KPMG US careers page on Twitter, you can see all of this. So I recommend, if you're in the US, that you go check that out. It'd be good for you to attend these, and maybe you can virtually connect with people, but maybe it's just them speaking to you. Either way, you should connect with them. And so I spoke about previously in other podcasts, reasons you wouldn't want to work for KPMG, but these are reasons you might want to because of opportunities in Masters in Data Analytics. Maybe you meet somebody you really like in a virtual career fair. Maybe you have a practice that you really like in the virtual career fair. Or maybe you can get into M&A, because M&A, or mergers and acquisitions, is a very lucrative career. Maybe you can't get in there in the other big four. And I checked out a lot of the other careers pages around the world for the big four, and I wasn't really impressed with that many. Some of them haven't posted in 2 years, but one that was pretty good was Deloitte Careers in UK. And they profile what the job is like for many people and their journey to Deloitte. And you have to click on a couple of the links on there. And some of them profile what the job is like, and some of them profile people's journey. And one of the ones I liked was Elizabeth Palfrey. It's on their Twitter page for Deloitte UK Careers. And it just gives you an overview of their background, like why they have questions to these people, like what attracted you to Deloitte? How does it compare to your previous employer? Can you tell us how your career has evolved here? And what do you do now? And Elizabeth, she's an operations lead for a team for creating and sending all of Deloitte's email marketing. And I think a lot of these people in this page work for their internal marketing team, which is, I guess, Deloitte 368. And she talks about, she previously worked at a firm that was 6,000 people. It wasn't small, but Deloitte dwarfed it. And she didn't see herself staying too long. And so she went to Deloitte because it's a bigger firm. And she said while she's at Deloitte, she's been able to build a broad marketing skill set. And a lot of this page is for people in marketing or consulting. And a lot of these career pages on Deloitte Careers UK are for consulting. But that goes in line with what we said before about how Deloitte is more of a consulting firm. But it's funny because some of the people on these pages talk about how they thought Deloitte was only an accounting firm, but they don't realize that Deloitte is more of a consulting firm. But on these pages, this other page, it's just a career article, and it talks about career options in consulting, business operations, human capital, Deloitte Digital. We've talked about a lot of these before: strategy, analytics, and M&A, enterprise technology, and performance. And because I know a lot of people want to ask what differentiates the firms and what is it like to work there. And I think these pages would be useful. I'll link to them in the description so you can check them out. Even if you work in the US or other countries around the world, you can check these pages out to understand what it's like to work at Deloitte, people's career paths to Deloitte, because I think a lot of people worry that if they don't go to the Big Four right away, they'll never be accepted in there. And that's not really true. So you can check that out. You can check this webpage out. So I'll link those in the description. But those are just some resources and career opportunities that I came across. I wanted to let you know about them. And to stay up to date, make sure to subscribe to this podcast. If you can support us financially through the Buy Me a Coffee link in the show notes, that would help a lot. But if you can't, make sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel, Big Four Accounting Firms, and like this video on our YouTube channel. Thanks for listening.